Thank you, thank you. Sorry, you had to read through such a long and boring intro. How's everyone doing? Well, we can do a little better than that. How's everyone doing? Yeah, okay. You have to forgive my Red Bull because I flew in from Seattle this morning. So last night, I guess it would be this morning, 1:30 Eastern, I got on a plane. And I flew here because Will said they're breaking in the new event space, and I would have missed it for the world. But we did have like an internal event there that I just absolutely couldn't miss at the last minute. And I couldn't go to sleep. Who can sleep on a plane? Anybody have trouble? I have trouble. And I was starting to panic a little bit because I'm like, I'm gonna get here and get a little worried. And I had this thought when I was like sleeping and I couldn't panic. I was so frustrated because I was in the exit row. And I was just like, what's the difference between like safe and unsafe? That could have made the difference in me getting a little bit more sleep. Anyways, well, today, guys, I'm excited to be able to talk about trends and techniques for marketers and data geeks. What we're going to do is, if you look at what I love about being able to come and to connect in events like this, it's just learning. I loved Larry's talk earlier today. Being able to see how he's using RSLAs and social together to be able to create intent and capture that is awesome. That was amazing. Audrey's breakdown of testing some of the really cool things that you're doing with weather and integrating into that is really awesome, and it's really inspiring. And of course, Roman, great tips on mobile. And what I'm going to do is, I'll give one or two tactical tips, and we'll just go a little bit beyond into some experimental and some forward-looking things as the industry changes, as we look at targeting different types of techniques to stand out in this competitive world. What could that be? As I mentioned yesterday, I was actually I guess 48 hours ago, I was when we did this event. Has anybody heard of the Marshmallow Challenge before? Okay. It's the first time I've ever done it. It was actually pretty incredible. It's a pretty simple thing. We made structures that look like this. But basically, what the challenge is that there's a group of people. We break out into teams of 4 or 8 or more, and we'd be at a table. Everybody gets the same pieces, the same material to be able to build a structure like we saw. 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape, 1 marshmallow, and 1 yard of string. And the goal is to be able to have this marshmallow be the highest from the table. There's no cheating. People want to lift the table up, or, I actually try to grab a balloon and hang the marshmallow down from it. Like you actually need to take it. You're supposed to have constraints. The really interesting thing is it's about collaboration, and it's also about how we approach problems. And that's a really interesting thing that you end up learning. You have 18 minutes to use all these ingredients to be able to build this really high tower. And so you're thrown into it. Nobody knows each other. And it'd be like if we were doing it right now, you just met up with 4 people. And so here's how this time usually breaks down. So they've done a study on it. In the first few minutes, you kind of orient yourself, like, what are we supposed to do? What are the rules? What are we going to have? What are we going to do after that? Then you start to build a plan. People usually draw down what it could look like. And then everybody starts to build. And then you have this moment, like at the end, or like, ta-da, at the end, how high is it? Is it standing? It's a freestanding structure or not? But in my case, it wasn't. In many cases, it's not necessarily a ta-da. It's more like an oops. It falls down and it breaks right away. And again, what you're trying to do is to build a structure that doesn't need to look like this. You don't know. Now that you've seen it, I've already screwed up the experiment for you the next time around. But the really interesting thing is they measured how different teams and different groups approach this problem. And what they found was one of the very worst were new graduates for business schools. New graduates from business school. And one of the best performing teams, new graduates of kindergarten. Kindergarten students. And they even did better than CEOs. Kindergarten students did better than CEOs. And so why was that? That's really the question, is like, why is it that these kindergartners were able to build structures larger than CEOs and business students? What turns out is the way that they approach the problem. And so this is that breakdown of how a kindergarten approached the problem versus a business student. And so you can see at the top, they all worked together, they built the plan, they oriented around it. Oftentimes there's a lot of jockeying for whose plan they use. Somebody wants to be the CEO, right? Especially, business school students. At the end, they put the marshmallow on, and what happens? It falls, it crashes. But the kindergarten students actually start with the marshmallow. They start with that goal in mind. And they start to build that way, and they iterate and they iterate and they iterate. And you get some really unique structures and just some really different things, but it's standing at the very end. And the lesson, there's a couple different lessons. One of them is about like collaboration, facilitation, but the other one is really around iterating and just making sure when you're approaching not just campaigns or like anything that we do, that we're iterating and we're starting with that goal and that end goal in mind. This looked very similar to what we ended up making after everything fell down. Not really proud of my work. So, you know, it's always important, I think, to orient ourselves around how we approach campaigns and what we're looking at driving. Sometimes it's just conversion, CPA. We have core metrics that we're always looking at and we're trying to drive. So we're going to get back to the kindergartner approach to campaign testing and everything else. But one of the things I did want to leave you with is just a couple of tactical, like straightforward approaches, especially if you're using Bing. How many of you guys are using Bing ads? Great, I'm glad. So here's a really quick approach and a tip that you can use. We talked a little bit about remarketing, so I added this in. So, you know, UET hasn't been the best experience if you've actually put it, we fixed it, but UET is the universal event tracking piece that actually enables us to provide remarketing so you can get RLSAs and Bing ads. So those services are there, super easy to get. This is something that it has a little bit more power to it, but I just wanted to show it. We made it easier. It's just one line of code. Here's the code. Goes in your tag management solution or on the header or footer of your website. Copy that bad boy in, and then you can go. One of the tips, though, if you're just getting new and you're just starting for remarketing that we definitely recommend and you should take a look at is just adding in audiences. So creating those audiences. Larry talked about repeat visitors. You can use brand familiarity. Basically, anybody who's been to your homepage, it's an audience to go ahead and create. But go ahead and add them in as bid only into your campaigns. And what you'll start to do is collect data. So even without bidding more, bidding less, I think I'm going to over here, the reception was a little bit better. You know, bidding more or bidding less, you actually be able to see which audiences work, which ones convert better, which ones don't. From there, do your modification. So super simple tip, easy way to get started and move forward. You know, you can do that across different platforms as well. Keep that in mind. But after you actually implement this, one of the interesting trends that we're seeing in 2016, when you look at core search, paid search, is this move from keywords to audience, right? Understanding a little bit more, not just about what term somebody's looking for, but who they are. What is it about them? And when you're able to do this, we actually have an extra reporting layer for you. And you can go to the segments report, and you can actually get some interesting information. This is just a quick pivot I pulled. You can get age and gender breakdowns, and you can see where you're converting the best, what audiences are working well, and which ones aren't. You know, so why is this important? Of course, you know, when we look at this is actually a breakdown. Basically, when we get into mobile, when you get into a competitive landscape, being number one matters, right? Being number one, number two, number three, or now number four with sidebar going away in AdWords, being on top really matters for driving volume. So any advantage you can get to understand which segment of your audience is performing better and provide an incremental bid gives you just an extra leg up. What we're seeing is wider and wider adoption in more competitive verticals. You can think financial services, right? Insurance, a lot of people are doing this. And this is just one way to go ahead and get there. But another interesting thing is when you actually break down, this is not for the network wide. We actually have a tool called Bing Ads Intelligence. If you just type in keywords.com, you will actually get redirected to download it. It's a tool that plugs into Excel for PCs only, excuse me. Sorry about that, we're working on that. PCs only, but what you can get is a click yield or a click curve. This is what we call a click curve for any of the keywords that you have. So any keyword, auto insurance, vacations to the Hamptons, all of that, we actually break down and we'll tell you for the last 30 days or whatever period of time by position, how many clicks that this keyword received. So you can see with sidebar going away, we actually have had 4 ads on mainline for a while now. So sidebar going away, how much traffic is being lost? To Will and Audrey's point earlier, very, very little. But you know, if you are in this spot, it matters quite a bit. In this term, it's about 7%. But there's some that are 15, it varies by term. You can get all this information, you can see what it is in Bing Ads, and it may actually help you get an idea of what it could be in AdWords as well. This is just showing you can do the bid up, the incremental bids on that element we talked about earlier around age and gender, get that extra advantage so we can move up. Because look at the difference between position 2 and position 1 as far as volume. It's considerable, right? Position 3, position 4. I mean, you can double or triple your traffic pretty easily by moving up a position or two. And it's not really about which keywords that we are being number 1 in anymore. It's about which, who are we being number 1? Which segment within that keyword are we really tackling? Bringing in other information like people who are familiar with my brand. Maybe they're my audience, my demographic. All of that really starts to add up to better ROI. Really simple. This is a feature that we have in Bing Ads that isn't necessarily available on search in Google, but just incremental bids up and down. Really easy to do once you figure out what your audience is using conversion rate. So that's using universal event tracking, UET, found in the shared library, and then pulling a segments report to figure out which of the demographics convert really well for you. Or if you already know what you have based on your data, go ahead and increase that bid, and you should be able to drive a little bit more volume for lower cost. You can actually break down by the searches. So what we're seeing here actually is interesting. Like this Bing Ads intelligence tool, we give a lot of data. I think that's tucked away. This is a hidden gem of search marketing. And what we're looking at on the right side is for the keyword, I think car rental. I pulled a random one. I think I pulled car rental here. By device, so the term car rental, exact match, on desktop, smartphones, and tablets. What is the age group that is searching on each one? And so what you can see here is the 25 to 34-year-old searchers who are actually, people who are using smartphones tend to be a little bit younger. Actually, almost 60% of those folks are 25 to 34 years old. So significant difference in demographic as you start to look and break down by devices. Again, competitive verticals, really small things can make a big difference to drive you from position 2 to position 1. All right. We'll just take a quick step back in voice search, and I'll just get a energy refill here. This is interesting. How many of you guys have used Siri, Cortana? Anyone have Echo? Of course. Have you guys used a personal assistant? Google Now, right? We've started to use these. You guys have actually used these. This is interesting to see how things are working. Search is actually moving away from the search box. So people are going, it's not that people aren't searching on the browser anymore, but more and more search is going to where people are. And the personal assistant is a great way to be thinking and breaking down, hey, how's search coming to somebody? Are you going to a web page or a computer and asking? No, you push a button on your phone, maybe on your laptop, or maybe in cars, you can imagine. Ask it a question. And what does it do? It has certain logic. Yeah, text my friend, set a reminder, and if it doesn't know the answer, kicks off a search. And so one of the interesting things, though, I walked into a meeting about 1.5 years ago with the product team from Bing, and this really great demo, a really great example of where we're taking search and what we're looking at. And so what they had was on the phone, they just described an example. So we're going to, what is it, Gunner's Run? After this, not 45 minutes, happy hour, and then afterwards, the after party is at Gunner's Run. So it's going to be a lot of fun, be there. But one of the things that they did is they had a phone, and they described a situation. It's 1:45 a.m. You're at Gunner's Run. What are you going to need besides in the last drink? Taxi, right? Uber, Lyft. And so instead of you searching for a taxi, what's going to happen? You can pop up a reminder and say, hey, would you like me to call Uber or Lyft or a taxi service? Here are some taxi services. Or maybe it's getting closer to Valentine's Day, a week away. Would you like some chocolates, some flowers? Would you like me to order, make dinner reservations? These types of pieces of campaign or of intent, that context. So you hear context, this is what's happening. You know, hey, your location, where are you at? Like timing, how is that going to drive what you are going to need before you search? This is that change that is occurring. And you're going to see more and more of this with personal assistants. The really interesting thing is, if you guys have used these, you're seeing in Windows 10, 200, I guess we updated yesterday, 270 million devices. Right here is a microphone, and this is actually Cortana for Windows 10. And so it's built in, its speech and voice is built right in. But the interesting thing is when we have a phone, and actually I just pulled the numbers, these are from this is from last year, 2015. But basically, when somebody has a Windows phone, this is about 40 million devices that we're taking the sample size from. that has a Cortana enabled button on it. Basically, the button is enabled if you hold down your iPhone button and Siri launches. 1 in 4 searches, almost 24%, 1 in 4 searches that have Cortana and that voice component enabled are being done through voice and not text. 1 in 4. I don't have the final number for February of this year. It's about plus or minus 2% off of this. So a considerable amount of searches. These searches tend to be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more local. I mean, this is more conversational. The conversational piece is really interesting because one of the things, I don't know if you guys have actually pulled a search term report and looked at this, but what we're seeing is a growth in question phrases year over year. People are asking more questions. When you actually you engage and you ask a question or you do a search with a personal assistant, you're asking a question more often than not. So you're seeing tremendous growth here. There's a lot of things right now. There's no input text button that says, there's no input button that says, you know, voice initiated or speech versus text. But there's some interesting things that we can start to do and start to act on is start to look at, wait a second, you know, how can I get a little bit more information or context from the question and the phrases? You know, maybe what or when, when or where has higher commercial intent than some like what or who or how. Watch out though, what somebody actually implemented a negative on what, and like you can say like, what is the price of, and that's a bad thing to actually negative out. But these are the types of things to start to look now to see, hey, wait a second, am I seeing this growth in question phrases and what can we do? All right. And again, we look at, when you look at personal assistants, when you look at Uber, that Uber example, Valentine's Day, like it's about understanding what people are going to want and then what is it that's driving them. You know, one of my favorite kind of phrases over the last year has been people don't tweet the way they search. People don't tweet that way. So instead of saying I need our car insurance or car insurance for a search, they're going to be like, got a new car, right? And so these understanding what real life event is kicking off the need and the eventual search can give you what Larry was talking about earlier around social and some of these other ways to be able to connect with somebody. Plant yourself there. So when we're building out these broader digital marketing strategies, that's important. And it gets back to that Uber example. But when we start to tease out the elements that trigger what within this campaign are driving, it's like, okay, location, like where you're at is a big deal. Timing, and it could be relative timing, not necessarily within the year, but I just bought a car. One of my favorite remarketing strategies has been somebody offering credit to people who have bad credit for car loans. What do? They wait for people who search for car loans for 3 weeks because they know it takes about 3 weeks for them to get rejected from everybody else before they go and they hit them, right? So there's these interesting ideas of how to exclude and engage when people are. When we start to break this down, we get some cool strategies. And if I've been talking about this for a little bit, but one of my favorite stories that's really kicked off this journey with understanding not just this context and predictive marketing, but also how can you apply in trends that we're seeing right now, like machine learning. Did you guys see that Forbes example where Larry he ended up on Forbes and had that interview? One of the things that he did to be able to create some of his lists was use machine learning. He used Azure, like web services, and he built a bot to crawl and build his list. That's how he's starting to build some of his lists, is using some of these services online and just creating really simple logic to crawl the web and to pull out and create really cool lists. I'll show you how I failed at doing that a little bit later, but I wanted to at least kind of plant the seed because it's interesting to start to experiment to see where we're at. So a few years ago, I was speaking at a conference and I heard this really crazy fact, and it was that that Super 8 was able to charge in Austin, Texas, $300 a night. And it was such a nutty fact I had to look into why is this happening. And if you're familiar with Super 8, some of the rooms look like that. And actually it turns out the cab driver is wrong. It was $500 for a Super 8 motel. $500 for a Super 8 motel in Austin, Texas in November 16th, not even Valentine's Day, right? Like what was really happening? And so when we start to break down why this pricing and this like unreal thing actually happened, it was really straightforward. There was a race, right? Like, why was that demand created? 117,429 people showed up on that weekend for Formula One racing for the very first time for the year. Very first time in 5 years at this track. So incredible demand for a scheduled event. Pricing goes through the roof. Profitability is there, right? So the supply and demand is huge. Now, why I talk about this is not just because it's an interesting story. When you're trying to do testing and trying something new, if a normal Super 8 hotel goes for a room night goes for $100 and you can get a $500 night, if you can sell a couple more of those nights, it's more profitable. It also means in some of your digital marketing strategies, if you're completely guessing and trying something new without Audrey's amazing testing strategies, that's a good place to drive a little bit more traffic, to have a little bit more leeway to see where you can have some impact. And, I had this thought, and the thought is that, we all know what to do for the holiday season, for retail, right? It's a big deal. We break down Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Green Monday, Thanksgiving, all of that. That weekend, we know what we're going to bid. We're going to build offers. We're going to do all these different marketing tactics to drive conversion, to drive revenue for our customers, our clients, and our business, our bosses. So we know what to do. But this is like a mini Black Friday happening in Austin, Texas that few people know about. So how can we start to map out some of these events and get an advantage? And it brought me to the back to school season, because it turns out that back to school is the #2 largest holiday season, retail holiday season in the United States, behind Christmas, or shouldn't I say holiday, the holiday season. And so, when we broke this down and we started to predict out and map out some of these events for back to school, something interesting happened. And how many of you guys have heard of Chegg? Chegg, book rental company. So this is actually results that Chegg was able to drive with applying this strategy. We'll talk about what they did in a minute, but basically they're able to drive 30% lower cost per order during this time and save a ton of money. And here's what we did. So what we found when we looked at schools is that across the countries, school dates are set by school districts. And in Philadelphia, I just checked. It's about September 8th or September 9th, I think, this last year that people go back to school after Labor Day. But it turns out if you look across the country, that it's different by different school dates. So if you look in around the August timeframe or even late July, Hawaii it goes back to school, and LA goes back to school around the 13th. Actually, in 2016, it's going to be August 15th is when they go back to school. Texas has a statewide mandated date, the 4th Monday of every August. People are going to go back to school. So all of these things are known well in advance. If you have kids, and you probably cannot wait. Well, they're in school now, but as soon as they come back, after a while, you probably can't wait for them to go to school again, so you know what day they're going back. Well, it turns out when we actually broke this down and we looked at the data, that the number of searches and some of the conversions for some of the things that people look for back to school varied across the country. In New York, which is after Labor Day, much like Philadelphia, the searches for backpacks and back to school related terms surged after Labor Day. But when you went to LA, it was on the 13th or the 15th of August. But when we're looking at these campaigns as digital marketers and trying to carve out these critical moments, we treat everything the same. We treat everything the same. The stores know. If you go to a Target in LA versus a Target in Philly or New York, they know. But the marketing teams haven't picked up on this. And so this discrepancy is something you can take advantage of. And so, you can apply some data. Basically, what drives people going back to school? What drives those searches? What drives that purchasing? When their kids are going back to school? Is it the 9th of September, or is it the 1st of August? Is it the 13th of August? And so starting to look at it, it turns out that backpacks is about 12 to 13 days before the kids go back to school. Within a public school day is about 2 weeks. People start to buy backpacks. So you see surges, look at it in Google Trends, of within the cities, backpack searches going up about 2 weeks before kids go back to school. The interesting thing too is conversion rates are higher during those times. Not all backpack searches are the same. And so when we start to break this down by geography, it gets a little different. And so right now we're just looking at Excel. I partnered with a company called MCH Data. And this one is actually New York. So this is when New York goes back to school. It's after Labor Day with the big surge. I think that's on the 4th. This is what California looks like. On the 13th, here in the middle, that's when LA went back to school for that day, but you have San Jose, you have San Francisco in a different time frame. When you put this together in the United States, you get the trend that you normally would think, that people start to go back to school mid-August, and then towards the end of August, it really picks up, and then after September, it goes down. But when you break it down in this bar here, what you're seeing is the more kids, the larger the bar, the more kids are going back to school. Each of the different color bands represents a different state. So this big blue one here, that's actually Texas. That's the 4th Monday. In this green bar there, that's LA. So you can't really tell like strategically what to do. And so there are some new tools that have really opened things up to be able to give different insights to drive marketing strategy. And this is a tool called Power Map, and this is built right into Excel. And one of my favorite tools to visualize. Another really good one is called Tableau. And I think Will was telling me about TIPCO. Well, TIPCO is another great tool. And so what we're going to see here in a second is a visualization of the United States. And we're going to see when kids go back to school. The higher the bar, the more the kids are going back to school. And again, remember, searches and purchasing within these regions for backpacks and other school-related supplies really follows the patterns that you see here. Pay attention to a couple of areas, a geography quiz here in the beginning. Arkansas and Texas up front for the first. Arkansas and Texas up front in the beginning of the year. Look at what's happening around them. And then we'll shift up to the Great Lakes states in New York at the end of the year. See if you can see a difference. All right. Ooh. So here we go. This is always the problem with live demos. Oh man, I really hope this video goes. Let's see if we can do it again. All right. And so what we're looking at here is just Excel. So this is built right into Excel. Mike, do we got it in the back? So here's what we're going to see here in a second, hopefully. If not, I'll have you all close your eyes, and I'll like really eloquently describe what this looks like. Okay, great. Here we go. So we have Excel. This is just the school dates mapped out by latitude and longitude. It could be street name, zip code, a lot of different things. The number of school kids going back to school. All we're doing is taking the data set and we're putting into this new tool called Power Map. In 3D maps is what it looks like in 2016. So it actually went ahead. This is all real time. This is nothing crazy. It's put down all of the different dots there in blue actually represent a different school that's mapped out. Right now, all we're looking at is geography, because what you need to make this tool work is two things. One is a geographic, what to map, a geography, and the second is like, what are you going to chart out, right? Because this is like Bing Maps in Excel charting on steroids. And so this is a 3D map, just to kind of show you what we can do, and it's location aware. Actually, when Will and I had engaged in a conversation, this is I brought up this is for you, Will. This is from San Diego. We were at a conference called Search Love in San Diego. We're actually in that little island there in the middle. This tool is self-aware, right? Just like you would have to map directions or anything else, we know. So we were actually right there at Search Love in a conference in San Diego. Now, all we've done is taken the data and we've mapped out where these schools are. But the next thing that we need to be able to do is to chart it, because the charting of, wait, are there more kids that go back to school in one area or another, really start to pop different questions. And so all we're going to do now is we're going to find, we have the location, we're going to go ahead and chart out enrollment. And so now we have a 3D bar chart by location. To get a little bit more clarity, there's other visualization. So that was a pie chart. Of course, you can do heat maps. There's a lot of different ways, but let's go ahead and look at a bar chart here. I'm just going to bring out a little bit of difference you can see a little bit easier. I'm going to make the bars a little bit taller and the dots a little bit thinner. And then we're going to go ahead and add in a different color to bring some clarity here. We're going to look at states. So we're just going to add a color and look at states. This could be campaigns. It could be a lot of different things if you wanted to look into it. This tool is very flexible. So now does it look a little bit more familiar to you guys, the different states? Okay, so one of the really great things though that this does is it can actually look at trends over time. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna play over time when kids go back to school throughout the school year. And so remember, the higher the bar, the more kids that are going back to school, the more searching and purchasing that are being done for back to school during this time. So if we push play, we're going to start here in July, and we're going to see how the school year rolls out. All right. So turns out there are some all year round schools that like they're always starting like in like July, which is too bad for those kids. But as we get into August, you're going to start to see the Southwest get into school. You can see Atlanta there went back in school, but look at Arkansas and look at Mississippi here. They don't go back to school until the middle of August. The fourth Monday just hit for Texas, and look at North Carolina, look at Texas. They go back to school at a different time. Now we looked at Great Lakes states after Labor Day, which was in this case September 3rd. They go back to school, and New York brings up the rear on the 9th. Do you guys see the differences there? There's some differences. The interesting thing is, again, as marketers, digital marketers, we haven't broken down the seasonality that way. We've looked at it from the macro view of July through September. When you break it down, it turns out it's made out of these micro events that are driving the behavior, right? Real life, one of the greatest kind of things I'm picking up right now is that search is reactive. You know what you want at the moment you know what you want, and the moment you want it, you go to a search engine and you type it in, right? At that time, you know what you want and you know when you want it. But what's happening before you actually search? Your life. Things are triggering the searches that you have. And so if we can start to understand what is driving the searches and connect with people there, do some marketing to those folks who are going to need it beforehand, we can get a little bit of an advantage. And so what we did was we looked at, this is breaking CPC, pretty core to search, of course, in being able to figure out the value of a search. So we looked at is, it turned out that in those areas, when they were going back to school, conversion rates were a little bit higher during these times. And so what Chegg did was they sold books to university students, and they knew what all the universities, when they started school, when they went back. And they just said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run a test during our highest volume weekends. And we're going to break it out into a couple different cohorts, the 18th of August, the 25th, and the 1st. So this is their highest traffic weeks when people go back to school for universities. And they just said, we're going to apply a really simple bid strategy on it. What we know is that students look for books the week before, the week during class, and the week after school starts. Pretty straightforward, right? Nothing too crazy. And they knew what that conversion rate looked like. So they applied a very simple bid modifier strategy to it. And, for that first group that started the first week, this is what it looked like. The next group, and so on and so forth. They layered it all together, and that's actually how they were able to drive that increase in ROI. So, because remember, not all backpack searches are the same. A backpack search in September 8th or September 9th in New York is worth more than a backpack search typically than a backpack search September 9th in LA, because they've been back to school since the middle of August. So that's some of the differences that can happen. And this kind of brings us back to this experimentation and looking at everything, kind of those marshmallow moments, the iteration, and sometimes having and doing things that you should have no business doing. And so I do that, and I fail quite a bit. And one of the things I originally told Will when I was saying, he was like, hey, what are you going to talk about? We were looking at how NFL Sunday changed buying behavior and search behavior during the NFL season, right? There's a lot of activity, a lot of draft. And so we set up all these different algorithms, these different tests by geography, and nothing interesting happened other than like a ton of adult terms and like some food terms and celebrity terms popping. So nothing really interesting to share there. But one of the things that was interesting that, Audrey really kind of reminded me of is this case about weather. And it's something now that you can use it through AdWords scripts and using API. The openweathermap.org, I believe, is what AdWords uses. There's a lot of different data sets out there, but this is one of those areas that I'm really starting to explore a little bit more. Because a few years ago, not even a few years ago, I was in Salt Lake City a while ago, and they told me something really interesting. Turns out their colleges, by the way, a lot of them will get out, they end school for the school year in April. They end school year for universities in April. I went to University of Washington in Seattle. We ended it in beginning of June. And it turns out that same data set that I was showing you actually has when people go back to school and their spring breaks, and so we're using that for travel. Just other applications and other things to take a look at. But when I was in Salt Lake, they told me something really interesting. And what they said was that it gets really cold in Utah. And so when it's really cold, you have the heat on all winter long. And what happens is at a certain point, it gets really hot and you push the air conditioning button. And that heating, venting, air conditioning system that has been heating all winter switches to air conditioning. Have you guys had this here? And then what do you know? It's really hot outside, it's really humid, doesn't work. You're gonna give somebody a call. And these guys fill up really, really fast. And so there's a lot of lead gen providers and everything. What they're saying was, well, this idea applies to weather. But not just any weather, but like these critical moments. Hey, when is the first snow? When is that first heat wave? When is that change in behavior going to happen? And the interesting thing is, just like with openweathermap.org, NOAA also has a 10-day forecast. So these signals, when there's going to be a heat wave over a certain period of time, if it's going to rain a lot, if there's an extreme weather warning, all of this. So this data is this pipeline of data coming in. And so one of the things that we're starting to experiment with is how do we use different tools? And I mentioned this earlier. Larry uses Azure to be able to process data, to build bots, to gather it. And one of the things that we're starting to experiment with is to use these tools and services that are out there that do a lot of the math, a lot of the testing for you. And what you do is you plug and play data. And so this is just a quick view of our system, which is called Azure. And you can think of Amazon Web Services. We have a very similar one. And what we're starting to do is take data, and then you can literally upload your data, weather set, keyword, and keyword. Let's say actually usually you want to do with your purchasing and buying data. So hey, it was a winter coat in Utah on August 14th, whatever that purchase data is. There's all different data sets you could put in here. You could put that in here, and then you can actually literally take testing algorithms and statistical testing algorithms off the shelf. And it's clicking. As you can see here, literally you just take your data, drag. You have another set of options for statistical tests, drag. And then you figure out, hey, what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking at weather by location, and to see is it a category, a winter, cold, summer? What does that actually look like? And then from there, testing. So you take all of this data, you put it together, and you see if there is some kind of statistical significance. And it creates a signal. And basically all you're looking for is a yes or no. Does this make a difference, yes or no? Is there a different behavior? Because if the answer is yes, then what's really cool about this, I know this seems kind of crazy, but what's really cool about this, you literally push a button, and it actually creates a service. And now this seems crazy, but it plugs right into Excel. So this is actually Azure with that service built into it, saying, hey, is there an extreme weather event? Did it actually impact purchasing, yes or no? Built into Excel, you can plug in your data, click a button, and it's going to tell you, yes, bid differently, don't bid differently, really simply. Now, I'll tell you, I haven't been super successful with this. But as we start to look at more and more data sets, we get closer and closer to figuring out what's happening. You're already hearing Larry, he used Azure to be able to build his bots, to figure out what his audience is. There's applications to be able to use this. And the point was yes or no, hey, does it work? And then this is the hey, apply a really simple bid rule. But the point here is, when it comes to innovation, when it comes to doing something new, when it comes to driving performance in and above what other people are doing, we have to try to be at the fringes. We have to iterate. We have to try new things. We have to use new tools. We have to look at data differently, to look at the problems, the audience, to figure out all of what we have, start with those really important key moments, and work backwards. And so, when you look at all of this, just a few quick takeaways. One, just remember, like a quick tip to drive better performance on Bing ads, especially if you're in competitive market space: input universal event tracking, pull a segments report, and bid up based on any of the segments that work well for you. Straightforward, simple. Second thing is voice search. Be thinking about how this starts to impact the way that you search, and how the hints, maybe the breadcrumbs of who, what, when, where, why might be applicable, or how people are engaging. The third thing is start to think about what is driving the search. Instead of reacting to people going to the search box and trying to get them there, how can we get ahead of it? That's what Larry's talk is about. Right? How do we either be at the moment of genesis of that intent, or how do we generate it? And then, of course, that last thing is not be afraid to fail and afraid to try new things to drive performance. And with that, thank you guys very much. Are you guys ready for some maybe some alcohol? Or we have some beer in the back here?
Yeah, that's up there.
Is that all right?
It is.
Yeah, I know it's a dangerous place to be between a group of marketers and beer. So thank you guys very much.
Questions for John? John, are you taking questions?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Any
Especially if I get a couple beers in me. We can talk about quality scores.
Go around the room. So I'll start on the side.
Secret sauce. When are we going to get Bing Ads Editor for Mac? No, anyone? Summer 2016, yes. I've been saying it's 6 to 12 months off for about 7 years now. So
I was wondering, when are you going to get shared bidding? Oh, shared budgets, rather.
Shared budgets. Yeah, so literally I was just talking to somebody about this on Tuesday at that big meeting. So right now it is on the roadmap. There's no specific time frame, but that we know that's a really big deal if you're managing across everything and being able to say, hey, I want to use my budget effectively. I need this. So that's on the roadmap now. As far as time frame, I don't have anything to share with you on that one, but definitely know that's a big one, especially for resellers. So like Larry, the Larrys of the world, we get hit up quite a bit because we don't have shared budgets.
When is the Yahoo acquisition going to begin?
Yeah, no comment. And actually, it's way above my pay grade. That's for dang sure.
We had some over here.
I found the voice search kind of stuff kind of interesting, and I wondered, have you seen any kind of application in terms of actually adding that into a campaign? So, where can I get a dinner reservation as a keyword as opposed to just dinner reservation, or even adding a question in the ad copy, like a mobile specific ad or something like that, and if you have any experience with that.
So right now, when it comes to like the actual like voice piece of it, no. And it's because there's no way to target voice specifically, right? 1 in 4 searches on Windows phones, at least, were voice and not text. And so we actually haven't been able to break that down. So I haven't seen the actual results. Where the things to really be looking at there's a couple pieces, like, a positive keyword on like, explicit keyword around like who, what, when, where, why, and seeing if that actually drives better conversion rate, better performance. So there's a lot of information in search term reports to look at. As far as ad copy strategy, we really haven't seen too much because we haven't broken it out. And, that's something that we're thinking about. But great question. No specifics on that. One of the things that's interesting too is starting to see prompts show up occasionally. Okay, Google, hey, Cortana, and search term reports as well. One of the things that we do is we put a little period if you do a voice search at the end of it, and that's one way for us to kind of take a look at it. But periods are also one of the largest typos. If you're looking, instead of a space on an iPhone, I have like where.m.I, you know what I mean? So, but it's interesting starting to look at that stuff.
Stuff. Excited to see where that goes. I'm actually going to pass the mic back. So John, let's thank John for a great presentation.
Thank you guys for having me.
Going to be available for questions and networking.